Committee. Good morning, committee, and welcome to members of the public joining us today, both in person and online. This is the 13th of December 2022 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the three area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public are invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones. Switch off your mobile phones and select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Members of the public are allowed to record or film any part of the meeting. However, they should conform to the protocol for filming and audio recording of public council meetings and not distract from the proceedings. Those filming should only focus on those directly involved in the conduct of the meeting. In addition, the meeting is being live streamed and the copy of the recording will be available to view on the council website following the meeting. No fire alarm test is expected. If the fire alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the closest exit and follow the directions of the nearest assembly point away from the civic offices. Public amenities can be located in the foyer of County Hall adjacent to the entrance. Members of the public who have given advance notice of their wish to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee, and my Vice Chairman is Councillor Bill Pipe. To introduce other members of the committee, Councillor Dave Bowell. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Susan Cocking. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Chair.
Councillor Jean Danseth. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Chair.
Councillor Nick Arlen. Good morning, Nick. Good morning to you. Councillor Paul Kimber. Councillor Louis O'Leary. Councillor Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Sarah Williams and Councillor John Worth. Officers involved in the meeting include Anne Collins, Area Manager, Western and Southern Team, Hannah Massey, who is our lawyer, Thomas Wild and Charlotte Loveridge, both planning officers, Elaine Tibble, Democratic Service Officer, and Josh Kennedy, Democratic Service Apprentice. Good morning to you all. Apologies. Do we have apologies, please?
We've received apologies from Councillors John Worth, Paul Kimber, Bill Pipe, Louis O'Leary and Sarah Williams.
Thank you for that. The committee have noted that, in fact, from that list of apologies, one is the vice chairman of the committee and therefore will need a proposal and a seconder for a stand-in vice chairman for the duration of this meeting. Do we have any proposals?
Yes, Chair. I propose Councillor Susan Cocking for Vice Chair.
Thank you, John. Do we have a seconder?
I would like to propose Councillor Cocking as Vice Chairman.
Committee, we have a proposal duly seconded for Councillor Susan Cocking to be appointed Vice Chairman for the duration of this meeting. All those in favour? Those against? Susan, will you come to join me? Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we'll now take item 2 on the agenda, and that's minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November 2022. Pardon? Not according to my list. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November 2022, as all members received a copy of those minutes.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. If members are content, I will sign those minutes as a true record of what took place. Okay, I will duly sign.
It is after apologies, declarations of interest. Josh was right on the agenda, but obviously your ways differently.
Okay, we'll now take item 3 on the agenda, and that's declarations of interest. Does any member have any declaration of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias, or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda? Thank you, committee. Public participation. Only those people who have registered to speak with Democratic Services will be invited to address the committee. The order of speaking will normally be the first 3 in objection, the first 3 in support, including the applicant or agent. If a ward or councillor who is not a member of the committee wishes to address the committee, they will be allowed 3 minutes to do so. Neither the objectors or the supporters will normally be questioned except to clarify a point of fact by the chairman. All written statements received by Democratic Services have been passed to the members prior to this meeting. May I advise the committee and members of the public that item 5B on the agenda, PFUL 2022-00228, Old Dairy Site, Rope Walks, Bridport, DT6 3RH, has been deferred for technical reason and will not be determined at this meeting. We'll now take item 5 on the agenda, and that's planning applications. We have 2 remaining planning applications before us today for consideration. A comfort break of 5 or 10 minutes will be taken as and when is requested. The first item, item 5A, is PFUL 2022-002660, Fishing Lake, Charity Farm, Lytton Cheney, DT2 9AP, and that's continued use of agricultural land as a camping site, retention of static caravan, log cabin, for use as a farm stroke site shop and cafe, WC shed, storage building, laying of hard standing and tracks for internal access and parking, and the erection of shower and toilet block. I now invite Thomas Wild, who is the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. As you've heard, the application is Charity Farm, Lytton Cheney, DT2 9AP, continued use of the agricultural land as a camping site, retention of static caravan, log cabin for use as a farm shop and site and cafe, WC shed, storage building, and the laying of hard standing and tracks for internal access and parking, and the erection of a shower and toilet block. This slide shows the site location outlined in red in this part of the plan here, with some context of the surrounding area. We have didn't mean to draw there. So we have Lytton Cheney itself here on the map, and the A35 running across the northern part of the map. It's a little bit faint on this plan, but you can see the contour lines from the Ordnance Survey mapping, which give an indication of the topography of the vicinity, with the A35 running along the top of the ridgeline in this area, and the land falling away relatively steeply into Lytton Cheney, and the site sitting in the bottom of the valley of the River Bride there. This is a bit more of a zoomed-in view of the site, showing its relationship to Lytton Cheney, the main routes following into the village where I'm indicating here. Application site, again, outlined in red with the river running along here. This plan shows an aerial photograph of the site. It's relatively recent from Google Earth, showing the application site. We have the camping field, which is applied for in this part of the site, with the access tracks which have been created here. We have this is the parking area, the existing a consented parking area which was constructed for the fishing lake, which is here. This is the log cabin, which is used as the cafe and shop. And we have the static caravan, manager's accommodation, and ancillary buildings in here. So moving on to the key constraints which are applicable to the site. The site is within the Dorset area of outstanding natural beauty, as is the case for the majority of this part of Dorset. Within the Bride Valley, and it's in an area of surface water flood risk. This map on the right-hand side of the slide shows the surface water flood risk mapping for the area. The darkest blue is the highest risk, 1 in 30 annual event probability. The medium blue here and here is the medium risk 1 in 100 year annual event probability, and the lightest blue is the 1 in 1,000 annual event probability. The proposal has several elements, and I've split them out here by the bullet points. The square black bullets are existing development which is unauthorised. So we have a camping site for 29 pitches with access tracks, the cafe and shop which has been constructed, static caravan to be used as manager's accommodation, which has been sited on the site, although it's understood this hasn't actually been occupied as yet. The car parking, which has been shown on the aerial photograph, the WC and storage building, and the new elements of the proposal which haven't yet been constructed are a shower and toilet block, which is to be in the northwestern corner of the site. This plan shows the site plan as proposed. So we can see the camping pitches sited around the edge of the camping field here, on the outside edge of the tracks. This block here is the shower and toilet block, which is proposed. We have the parking area here, the farm shop cafe, static caravan, storage shed, and another storage another storage shed in this part of the site, and the WC paddleboard washdown building in this part of the site here. So all of the elements apart from the building in this northwestern corner are existing unauthorised developments, which this application is seeking to regularise. This plan shows this floor plan and elevations of the log cabin building, shop and cafe. So it's a relatively simple structure we have the internal areas with the kitchen, serving area, internal seating areas, and a external deck seating area. This is the static caravan manager's accommodation. So it's a fairly simple static caravan structure, but you can see that it's got a brick plinth on the site. So there is a level of permanence that goes along with it. And these are the plans for the proposed shower and toilet block. So we have shower cubicles along each side of the block, wash basins on the ends, and a disabled shower and WC incorporated within that block. These are some site photographs. We have, this photograph is taken from the southern end of the site. The existing log cabin building, a cafe shop with an area of hard standing terrace. This is the static caravan with, you can see the brick plinth at the bottom there. This is the car parking area that's been created, the newly created unauthorised car parking area to the eastern part of the site, with the supporting washdown and storage buildings. And this shows the edge of the camping field, so you can see the hard-standing tracks extending around the site, with the pitches here marked out that they're on grassed areas, and the landscape planting that's been established on the site boundary, just showing there. Move on to the next slide. So planning history for the site, there is of some relevance here. Oh, gone too far. So most recently in 2021, an application was considered for the change of use of the agricultural land to the caravan and camping site, the mobile home for permanent residential occupation by the site manager, and the access tracks, and the construction of a small fish stocking lake, all of which was a retrospective application. And then in 2006, that's the consent for the creation of the fishing lake to the south of this site, with the fisherman's hut and 12 parking spaces, which we've seen on the aerial photographs. These two photographs provide a bit of a comparison between, on the left we have the site as it was at the time of the 2021 planning application, so we can see the access tracks that had been created at that time. You had the manager's accommodation in this part of the site, and then we can see, moving to the right hand side of the slide, is you've got the addition of the parking area, the cafe, and some additional buildings and supporting buildings, and the growth of the hard standing in this part of the site. The main issues, just to run through on the application, we're starting with the principle of development. Local plan does provide support for tourism and leisure-related uses, but the support is provided only insofar as the development would not harm the landscape and the important landscapes of the area of outstanding natural beauty. And the proposal in this instance would also result in a dwelling in a location which is considered unsustainable, being outside of the any defined development boundary. And it's considered that insufficient justification has been provided to support the need for that dwelling. We have, moving on to landscape impacts, since the 2021 refusal of planning permission, additional landscape mitigation planting has been proposed. However, this has also been offset by additional development which has been carried out since that time, including the car parking and the cafe building, and we've received comments from both the Dorset AONB team and the council's landscape officer, who have advised that the scheme is harmful to the landscape, and that the harm will continue with the scheme. The landscape officer comments that the mitigation is not sufficient to moderate the adverse effects of the development, and the AONB team have commented that the proposal is contrary to the objectives of the Dorset AONB management plan, and undermines the landscape character of the Bride Valley. In relation to this, we just have a photograph of the site. This is taken from the A35 to the north of the site, so just to illustrate the visibility of the site within the landscape. You can see that the Bride Valley is quite open and relatively undeveloped, and the site is quite visible in the views of the Bride Valley, and it's quite prominent. Moving on to flood risk, the site, as we've seen on the previous slide, is affected by areas of surface water flood risk. A site-specific flood risk assessment has been provided by the applicant, and that has confirmed to the satisfaction of the lead local flood authority that flood risks could be suitably managed with an appropriate drainage strategy. However, the flood risk assessment and application hasn't given any consideration to the availability of sites, alternative sites, which are at lower risk of flooding to accommodate the development, and therefore the sequential test, as required by national planning policy, has not been passed. There are some economic benefits associated with the development. There's job creation associated with the development, and of course contribution related that to the local economy, both from that job from job creation and from the spend from visitors to the site. However, taking into consideration the size and number of jobs that would be created, it is considered that these would be relatively modest, and it is considered that the economic benefits which are achieved from the site wouldn't overcome the landscape impact. It's also noted that a lot of the economic benefits which have been raised in comments, both in third-party comments and parish council comments on the application, relate to the use of the lake and its value as a tourist resource, and both to the locality and in wider use. But it's important to note that that lake falls outside of the scope of this application. This application is only relating to the campsite and the unauthorised development, and then the new shower block. Then moving on, therefore, we have the recommendation, which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons which are set out in the report to this committee. Those reasons relate to the landscape and AONB impacts of the development, the unsustainable location for the creation of a new dwelling without adequate justification, and the flood risk, given that the sequential test has not been passed in this instance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We've got a number of speakers on this particular item. So I now invite Mr. Edward Dyke of Simmons and Sampson, speaking on behalf of the applicant, to address the committee. Please speak directly into the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Dyke.
Thank you. I'm here with the applicants who are working extremely hard in their endeavour to set up a campsite and facilities which is aimed at both promoting the local area to tourists and also to provide an invaluable service to the local community. They have already provided a safe pedestrian link to the campsite by a permissive footpath running alongside the road to the White Horse Inn, giving safe access to the lake from the village and for camping guests to access the pub. The small shop cafe facility on the site provides a service to both the tourists and the local community. They've been bowled over by the level of support that they have received from locals and the wider community alike. Please note that of the 60 people in support of this application, 39 are from the locality, and all of those live and work in the area and enjoy the facilities that are available to them on site. There is a clear understanding of the site situation within the AONB, and multiple supporters have highlighted the fact that government is trying to encourage people to get out and experience the AONBs throughout the land, and the Lytton Lakes campsite facilitates this. They find it difficult to understand why the planning department are not willing to support such a clearly beneficial facility to the local area. There is an acceptance that the detailed landscape mitigation plan produced by the applicants will blend the site into the wider landscape in a relatively short period of time. The economic and social benefits of the proposal far outweigh any temporary negative impact on the visual amenity on the AONB. The publican of the White Horse Inn at Lytton Cheney, Mr. Venning, wanted to be here, but due to ill health is unable to attend. He asked me to make the point that the site contributes enormously to his business's viability, and he finds it hard to understand how the planning officer can play down the economic benefits of the site. During the COVID period, the publican made the point that the campsite was a lifeline to helping to save the pub from closing down. The Bride Valley Vineyard in Lytton Cheney is also one of those local businesses that has written in full support, highlighting the economic benefits of the campsite. It is not just the economic benefits that should be considered, but the physical and mental health benefits that are offered on site by way of the wild swimming that is enjoyed by a large number of local residents, and the general ability to connect with nature by enjoying the fresh air and facilities on offer. This is highlighted by countless people during the consultation process. To have received 21 comments of support from outside the area is impressive. A key theme of those writing in relates to the evident mental health and wellness benefits the campsite brings. They also voice all of the above points relating to the enhancement of and support to the local economy. This clearly depicts a common understanding of the wider benefit the campsite delivers to the area. The campsite has clearly resonated with people countrywide, and they can clearly see this wider benefit instead of the temporary visual impact that the local planning authority are focusing on. We urge you to support this application, which is supported on policy grounds. In respect of the flooding, the flood risk assessment that has been carried out clearly makes the point that there is very little risk of damage or harm to people or property. Any flooding on a surface water basis is swift and low in problem. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Doe. I also invite Councillor Bill Orchard of Lytton Cheney Parish Council, and he's chairman of planning of that authority, to address the committee. Again, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Councillor Orchard.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to address the Planning Committee. Lytton Cheney Parish Council, on balance, supports this application for the following reasons. It provides employment and supports farm diversification. It benefits 3 other local businesses, the local public house, the plant nursery, and Bride Valley Vineyard. The site provides an important community resource within walking distance of Lytton Cheney, as well as being used by passing walkers and cyclists and the local school. 60 local residents attended the meeting when the Parish Council met to consider this application. Those present overwhelmingly supported the proposal, and it became clear that many local people visit the lake for leisure and recreation use and to enjoy its environment. While paragraph 16.5 of the case officer's report makes it clear that the lake already has planning permission and is beyond the scope of this application, the applicants have emphasised that free use of the lake by the local community is only possible while it can be subsidised by the camping and the cafe. The Parish Council takes very seriously its responsibility to conserve the quality of the AONB, both for its own sake and so it can be enjoyed by future generations. We therefore fully understand AONB and landscape consultee concerns about the visual impact. However, Dorset Council has already permitted the expansion of a nearby site within the AONB, which we feel has a significantly greater impact. The Parish Council feels that the visual impact can be mitigated by appropriate conditions and/or legal agreements covering landscaping, and by prohibiting the use of the site for camping during the winter when the site is more visible within the landscape. However, it is imperative that the operation of the business is tied to the parent diversifying farm, and the static caravan is tied to management of the site. These conditions and legal agreements are set out in full in section 9.1 of the case officer's report. The Parish Council considers them intrinsic to any approval, and the applicants have indicated to us that they would find these acceptable. Under these circumstances, the Parish Council feels that the landscape concerns would be outweighed by the benefits. We therefore ask the Planning Committee to approve this application, but only subject to the conditions and/or legal agreements set out by the Parish Council in its consultation response, and reiterated here. Right. The operation of the campsite should be restricted to the 1st of April to the 30th of September. There should be no more than 30 caravans and tents in total on the site at any one time. There should be no overwinter storage of caravans. The landscape mitigation strategy, as shown on their plan, shall be implemented in full during the first available planting season. The static caravan should only be occupied by the manager of the site during the period 1st of April to 30th of September. The static caravan shall be removed from the site should the campsite cease to operate. In accordance with the local plan policy, ECO N8, camping and caravan sites, the diversified business, in this case the campsite, should be tied to the parent farm, that is Charity Farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Orchard. I now invite Councillor Mark Roberts, who's the ward member for Chesil Bank, to address the committee. Councillor Roberts, you also have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to the committee. I fully support this application to approve the very well managed campsite for the 6 months of the year, as mentioned, and the excellent facilities, including the new footpath through the applicant's fields back to the village and the pub. There are 4 strands I will outline: local support, wild camping, objections, and the Bride Valley itself. Huge local support from residents, campers from all over the country, neighbouring landowners, and a unanimous vote in favour by the Parish Council. The Parish Council meeting was overwhelming, with over 50 residents and their families all in favour, with many mentioning the White Horse pub. The wild camping, my ward, Chesil Bank, probably has the greatest problem in Dorset Council with wild camping on the local beaches. The police and Dorset Council are both involved in struggling to contain this, as there are just not enough campsites. The objections we've received, the 2 are about establishing precedent, which of course is not a material consideration. And there is one from a family member of a parish councillor who voted to approve, and that confuses me slightly. Now I will come to the Bride Valley itself. The description of the Bride Valley in the officer's report could have been lifted from a Thomas Hardy novel. I quote, "Small nucleated villages of limestone and thatch with locally prominent churches along the valley sides and isolated manor houses along the valley floor. The reality is different. Lytton Cheney has scores of modern houses, including the large development at Baglake. Most farmhouses are brick and pebble dash with slate roofs, including our 2 county estate farms. May I bring the committee up to date? There are now 2 vineyards at this end of the valley. There are 3 large caravan and campsites at Burton Bradstock at the western end of the valley, Freshwater, Larkfield and Gaston Farm. At Breedy Farm, there are regular music and cider festivals with hundreds of festival goers camping in surrounding fields with little or no facilities. However, most importantly, the view from any higher ground, lane, footpath or trunk road to the north is completely dominated by the massive cheese factory at Park Farm, less than 1 kilometre to the southeast. And that photograph, which showed the campsite, if the camera had moved just a few degrees to the left, we would have seen this massive development. Up to 500 employees make cheese and park their cars in visible car parks, all with planning permission in an AONB. I fully support the AONB, but tourism and farm diversification are vital to enable the countryside to flourish. This is not a blot on the landscape. This is a fantastic facility for local residents and visitors to Dorset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Okay, that completes the public speaking. I call on Thomas Wild, the case officer, to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify. back to.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. There's just a couple of points that I would like to follow up on. Some of the representations there, or deputations there, have referred again to the use of the lake as a facility for the area. I just wanted to reiterate the point that, of course, the lake itself is not part of this application, and the use of the lake as a free resource is a commercial choice by the applicant, and it's not something that we necessarily have control over, even if that is something that they choose to do at the moment. In respect of the landscape impacts, I just wanted to clarify that we have had quite clear responses from the landscape officer. I just wanted to read some of the response, if that's okay. And they've commented that I consider the measures proposed to moderate the adverse effects of the development on the landscape are likely to be inadequate, because the amount of soft landscaping proposed would not be enough to successfully integrate the development with the landscape, with the character of the site and the surrounding area. They've said it's clear that the siting, alignment, design, scale, mass and materials of the proposed buildings would not complement and respect the character of the surrounding area, and that the development would be likely to generate a level of activity and noise that would detract significantly from the area's sense of tranquility and remoteness. So that's the background essentially for the considerations, and that's the view of the council's professional advisors on landscape matters. There was another point. Sorry, I'm just. No, sorry, that was actually the 2 points that I wanted to make, and effectively just to follow up on the ultimate conclusion of the landscape officer is that they consider that the landscape mitigation, it hasn't been demonstrated that would be sufficient to moderate the impacts of the site in this instance. Thank you.
Could I verify that in fact conclusion was a result of a survey conducted by the landscape officer, is that correct?
Yes, they've provided quite a detailed consultation response. I believe they visited the site as part of that. They've conducted a detailed review of the applicant's landscape and visual impact assessment.
Okay, are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Right, who have we got first? Councillor Bowell.
Right, you got me at last. Just press the buttons quick. Can I just ask, Thomas, could you go back to the view from the A35? I was expecting to see more views shown photograph-wise, because I've actually visited the ones that were set out in the report for my own benefit, so that I could understand where it's sat in relation. So that's the only photograph we have, is it?
That's the only photograph I have in the presentation.
Okay, so that's actually taken from the side of the A35,
Yes.
which is 70 mile an hour dual carriageway, probably there. Yes. Very brave. Yeah, I just wonder whether the relevance of that is normally when I'm going on the A35, I'm concentrating on the road, so I doubt many people will actually physically see that if they're walking, or would they be walking there? So there's no other viewpoints to see from the footpaths or anything?
There are some, but those, I just haven't included those in the present. Sorry, there are some, but I just haven't included those in the presentation. The applicant's own landscape and visual impact assessment actually has some photographs which set those out, but I've just included one here for the sake of kind of brevity of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, because I think that's one of the important points. Much is being made of the visual effect of this application will have on the landscape, and I'm struggling to actually see that it causes that much of an issue to me, despite the technical people, landscape officers, and the AONB team, and their very detailed report. But you need to. I've actually been to the site. I've been past it twice because I couldn't find it because it's that well hidden. So I'm struggling with its prominence in the valley floor, and having listened to Councillor Roberts' comments regarding the cheese factory and the other camping sites nearby, I was struggling. So I was hoping that there was more visual photographs to see, but I'm quite happy to leave it at that, Chair, on the technical point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burwell. I think next on my list is to ask a technical question. Councillor Kelvin Clayton for a question, and I'm going to go back to the case officer.
Just to point out, I've managed to bring up the photographs that are included in the landscape and visual appraisal. So if I just share my screen again on that one, if you bear with me, I can put those up on the screen. Sorry, it's going to have a little. There we go. So this photograph is taken from a closer viewpoint to the site. So just to illustrate, so we can see on this site is taken from the hillside just to the west of Lytton Cheney. We have the campsite visible in the landscape there, and there are other viewpoints taken from closer vantage points. Again, the rising land levels, which illustrate the visibility of the site in the landscape. There are other vantage points where the site is less visible, or so if we go back up, we have, this is from the north of Lytton Cheney, so you can see that the site is visible in the landscape there, and this is from the southwest. So the visibility from the south is less. I think that the visibility of the site is predominantly from the north, and its prominence in the landscape is from the north.
Councillor Burwell, does that satisfy you?
Actually, it does, Chair. It actually emphasises my point, I think. But thank you very much for finding them, Thomas.
Okay, the next person on my list to speak is Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Over to you, Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. It was related to what Councillor Bulwell was saying on that photograph from the A35. To what extent was that photograph zoomed or magnified? Because I drive along the A35 on a regular basis, and it seems to be on a much larger scale than my eyes detect.
I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I can say that it's not, the photograph isn't taken to any identifiable landscape visual impact assessment guidelines. It's a site visit, quick snapshot photo, effectively. So yes, it's not a verifiable image. It's an illustrative image that the site to indicate that the site is visible.
Councillor Kelvin. Yeah, no, I was coming back to you.
I don't believe that's a definable characteristic. That's my description.
Councillor Willard is to speak. Can I remind the committee, please, to conduct all questions through the chair? Thank you very much. Councillor Kate Weller.
Thank you very much, Chair. Looking back, this may be a question that the agent may be able to answer rather than Mr. Wilde, and forgive me, the photographs that you were showing from the agent, I'm not going to ask you to go back, but somebody can maybe answer me because my vision, I couldn't really see. There were marks on the photograph that appeared to me either to be clouds, in which case they were terribly uniform, or they were electricity pylons, in which case they were extraordinarily intrusive. And I just wanted to know whether they were transient clouds or whether they're always there. If they're pylons, that's far more intrusive than a few caravans.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I come back to you to answer that question, Mr. Wilde?
Just going to stop sharing that. Bear with me a second. Is it the marks on these marks?
You see up the sky?
Mm.
There's another photograph where there are like three in succession across the sky. There, you see.
Chair. No, Chair, it's annotation.
We have annotations.
It's writing, yeah, it's
Yeah.
arrows and writing. There's no pylons there.
No, no pylons.
Councillor Bell, are you wishing to come back? Back to you.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, it's a second technical question, if that's okay. Okay. Thomas, for clarification, we've been talking about the manager's accommodation. Is this the fisherman's hut that was already on site that's got approval, or is it an additional building?
No, that's an additional building. It is, if I go back to my photographs of the site, it's a static caravan which has been built onto the site on a brick plinth. It's the building here that's visible in the background of this photograph. So it is an additional building which is not the fisherman's hut that was previously consented.
Thank you, Chair. That answers the question.
Councillor Dunseith, I believe you're wishing to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. This fisherman's hut, I believe it's been removed. Is that correct? Page.
I come back to you, Mr. Wilde.
Is that of my report, page 12? Yes. Let me just... Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
The fisherman's hut has been removed. If there were any further queries about it, that's not there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunseith. Does that answer your question? It does, yep. Okay. Do we have, of your collection of photographs, which you later displayed on screen, do we have an actual picture of the cheese factory that was mentioned previously?
Sorry. My microphone off. So we have the site here in the kind of mid foreground, and the cheese factory is this marked in the distance.
Thank you for that. No, are there no more technical questions? Before I open the debate, members, may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Can I also remind members to speak directly into the microphones, which should be kept on mute when not speaking to preserve audio quality. I now open the debate to members. Anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Ireland, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I know the area rather well because I cycle around there a lot. I'm guessing Mr. Wilde's photo was taken at the top of Whiteways or one of the other roads there. And so to answer Councillor Bulwell's query earlier, yet people do stop at the top of the A35 because, you know, it's quite a steep hill and you get a breather. So I've cycled around there a lot. I've never gone to the cafe, it must be said. I also know the area quite well because I used to shoot at a range down the road, which is now closed. Do I find the caravans and the camps sticking out too much in the AONB? No, I don't. I've stopped there many times. It describes in the report Bride Valley as that of an intimate and tranquil character, but we have cheese factories, we have lots of other things down there. We had a shooting range. So I would just like to propose that we actually accept the application and list the conditions as laid out in the report.
To clarify that, you're actually proposing to reject the officer's recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we have a proposition before us. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, I'm going to come back to that. Yeah. Councillor Weller, you would like to second?
I'd like to second and I'd like to speak, if I may, please.
Okay, yes, go ahead. You may speak.
Thank you very much. The officers often speak about a building being unsustainable, but in this situation, because the manager's building is during the times that the campsite is open, it is entirely sustainable during those times. It wouldn't be clearly during the winter months, and the applicants have acknowledged that when they say that the manager won't be living there when the campsite is closed. I find that this whole thing really rather strange. If you drive along the Weymouth to Bridport Coast Road and look down, there are sprawls of caravans right on the Jurassic coast with no mitigation planting or anything else. And yet here we have mitigation. If you look at the conditions that the parish council have suggested, that seems entirely legitimate to me. Looking at the flood risks, the area where the caravans were, and I may be wrong on this, but that seemed to be a 1 in 1,000 years, whereas the other areas were the 1 in 30, not where the caravans were going to be. So it doesn't. I absolutely understand our officers' feelings on the impact on AONB. We have to be terribly, terribly careful about that. But this looks to be quite a modest, quite a well thought out design, providing not only for tourists, which is important, but more importantly, for our local people. It's an amenity for local people and a help to local businesses. So I'm more than happy to support the proposal that we reject the officer's recommendation in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Right, we've got a proposal and a seconder to reject the officer's recommendation. We therefore need to clarify exact reasons in planning terms for your proposal to reject it. Do you have anything in mind there, Councillor Ireland?
In my view, the economic benefits outweigh the damage, alleged damage to the AONB.
I do agree with that, Councillor. I'll just consult with our lawyer. Can I pass across to Anne to actually help us out in certain conditions to reject that proposal from the case officer?
Thank you, Chair. I hear what you say about the economic benefits outweighing the harm to the AONB. Members need to be very clear as well as to why they don't consider the recommended reason to stand with regards to living on site. I've heard what Councillor Weller said about the caravan not being occupied in the winter, but what is members considered functional an essential need to live on site. And we also need to be clear in respect of the flood risk. I accept that, you know, the main part of the site is outside of the highest flood risk area, but national guidance is very clear that sequential test does have to be applied. And in this case, we've had no evidence of that being applied by the applicant. So members do need to be very clear as to what their grounds are for going against those officers' views.
Thank you for that. So what we need to do is clarify the exact reasons and conditions for refusing the officer's recommendation. Shall I suspend the meeting for a few moments? 10 minutes?
Well, I think obviously.
Do we have any other comments from members, please? Councillor Weller.
This is, I'm not trying to be frivolous here. This is a serious point. It's a sort of chicken and egg situation. Because there is a very small risk of flooding in this site, seems to me to support the fact that the manager needs to be on site, to be aware of those and to take remedial measures should that eventuality help. So the one supports the other in that respect. Not having a manager increases the risk should a flood occur. Having a manager can mitigate against those risks. As I say, that I know that is well a logic, but it seems to me to be logic nevertheless.
Do we have any other member of the committee wishing to speak? Councillor Burwell.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I was very taken with Councillor Roberts' speech and also the points made by the Parish Council and even the conditions that the Parish Council have put in. And I'm struggling to find any other conclusion other than that this should be approved. I understand what the officers are saying, but I think a lot of this is subjective and it's down to, apart from the sequential test, which I wanted to come to in just a second for clarity, but basically it's a matter of whether we come to the same conclusion as the officer and the AONB team, and we take into account wider things, including the effects on the local community, etc. And it's not just economic benefits with the AONB, it's also, as alluded to earlier, spiritual well-being, and people actually need to be in the AONB and enjoy it. It's a very tranquil site. As I said, I took the liberty of going along to see it, and it was very peaceful, and I was struck by how well run it was. So I'm struggling if we do anything other than approve it. So could we just go back to the sequential test on the accommodation? Was that the one, please? Thanks.
I'm going to hand that back to the case officer. Sequential test, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to be very clear, the planning practice guidance, which we are required to consider when determining applications, states, even where a flood risk assessment shows a development can be made safe throughout its lifetime without increasing flood risk elsewhere, the sequential test still needs to be satisfied. Application of the sequential approach in the plan-making and decision-making process will help to ensure that development is steered to the lowest risk areas where it's compatible with sustainable objectives to do so. So it's about this issue that there's a flood risk on site, and it hasn't been identified that this is the only suitable site for the uses in question because they've not gone through that sequential test approach.
Okay, Councillor Ireland, you'd like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, do you need me or do you want Councillor Bolwell to go first? No, it's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on that one. So basically, because the campsite is by the lake and the two go together, the sequential test is inferring that they could have looked at a different site to put the campsite at. And because they haven't done that, then that test, it's failed that test. So not about the fact that it's in a good position, but they need to have considered somewhere else. So if they'd have considered somewhere else and said, actually, there's nowhere suitable, everyone would have been happy. Thank you. Okay. Thanks very much for that. Cheers, Chair.
Councillor Ireland, I think you are now next.
Yeah, I'm now slightly confused whether what I'm going to say is relevant anymore. I suspect it probably is. One of the things I remember from being on this committee going back quite a few years now, I guess, was that we ended up approving a development in Bridport. And it was in a place called Flood Lane. I remember that. And if I remember correctly, the application was for permanent housing, it was physical buildings. And part of the conditions on the application was to have flood alarms and an evacuation protocol. And yet we approved it, which I thought at the time was rather bizarre. I suspect I probably voted against it. But yet we're looking here at a field which is caravans, mobile caravans, touring caravans, tents. So the risk to property is negligible, and I think the risk to life is negligible. And I guess that from what we've just heard from Ms. Collins, the only reason we're considering this is because they didn't identify another alternative site and reject it. There's a leisure facility there. There's a cafe already, okay, unauthorised, but people come to use that area to use the lake to swim in, to fish in, and it's the obvious place to have a campsite, isn't it? So my proposal still stands as far as I'm concerned.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Do you have, going to Anne and Thomas, do you have sufficient indication of the feeling of the meeting in order to come up with some alternative conditions?
Yes, we probably do. We'll need to adjourn the meeting though, Chair, please, for 10 minutes.
Councillor Ireland, before I do that, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I guess it's really a technical question, legal question that maybe Hannah can answer. So if we approve this, obviously, there's no appeal as such against approvals, but is there a risk that if we approve this, somebody, I don't know who, would take this to a judicial review because we ignored the sequential test?
Thank you for that, Councillor Ireland. I appreciate that. I'll come back to Anne. Over to you.
Yes, Chair, there is, as Councillor Ireland says, there's no third-party right of appeal, but like with any application, once a decision is issued, there's a 6-week period for JR. And yes, if we've not adequately demonstrated how or why the sequential test has been met, there is that risk of a legal challenge.
Bearing that in mind, Ms Collins and Thomas. Do we still wish to adjourn in order to conduct a list of conditions or a proposal?
Chair, that's really a decision for members as to whether they feel they've got adequate reasons to overcome that issue.
Councillor Ireland, your proposal is to reject the officer's recommendation, or is it to reject the officer's comment and recommendation and to bring in a subsequent proposal to accept the original application?
I guess yes. I think we'll find as I think we'll go to a vote. I'm obviously looking around, but I think we're probably going to be unanimous on this. So yes, we'd like the proposal in front of us to go forward, the application. And if it helps, I think we'll probably all be content with the list of conditions that the Parish Council put forward, if that helps.
Are we still willing to adjourn in order to continue with that? Councillor Weller, you heard the Councillor Ireland's proposed proposal amendment, and the fact that it's now proposing acceptance as well as the rejection of the officer's recommendation, but the proposal of the original application. Are you in compliance with that?
Yes, Chairman. My seconding is to reject the officer's recommendation and propose that we approve the application with the conditions pretty much as the Parish Council have set out already.
And is that sufficient for you to come up with some form of words? Thank you. I therefore, 10 minutes. I therefore suspend the meeting for a period of 10 minutes whilst the officers debate the new proposal. We'll reconvene at 20 past 11. Thank you, members and members of the public. It's now just gone 20 past 11, and I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Before I think we proceed, I'd like to make it absolutely clear exactly what we're voting for. The proposal is to reject the officer's recommendation to refuse the application, and to propose that the application itself be approved according to the conditions laid out by the local authority. Yeah, yeah. Right, okay. Over to you, Anne.
Chair, I think really there are two options before the committee currently, based on what I've heard you say. The first would be to delegate authority to the head of planning and the service manager for development management enforcement to grant plan permission, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement to basically tie the ownership of the campsite and the facilities there, including the cafe, mobile home, etc., to Charity Farm, in accordance with Policy Econ 8 farm diversification, which is what members have indicated, and subject to a list of planning conditions, which I'll run through in a moment. The second option would again delegate authority, subject to the completion of the legal agreement and the conditions, but also require the applicant to actually submit some information about the sequential test. Because at the moment, there is no information, and I have been asked the question about, does that put us at risk of JR? And the answer is, yes, it does. Which would not be of any benefit to either the council or the applicant if that JR was successful. So you could delegate authority to require further information with regards to this sequential test, and for that sequential test to be considered by the head of planning and the service manager in consultation with yourself as the chair of the planning committee, and if satisfied, to then proceed with the completion of the legal agreement and the planning conditions. So those are the kind of two options. If I just run through the reasons I've heard for doing so, the reasons I've heard from members for wanting to move a motion to grant is the economic benefits are considered to outweigh the harm to the OMB. The mobile home is considered to be required on site to assist in mitigating flood risk and would not be occupied all year round. And the development is required in this location due to the existing use of the lake. They seem to be the reasons that members have said for proposing the motion they have. And if we now go to the conditions, 3-year time limit, standard one for the implementation, approved plans list, landscape implementation and maintenance condition, a seasonal restriction condition, only allowing the campsite to be used between the 1st of April and the 30th of September and preventing no overwinter storage of caravans, a seasonal occupancy condition of the manager's accommodation, so it can't be occupied outside of that period, the 1st of April to the 30th of September, that the manager's accommodation only be occupied by a person employed at the campsite, details and materials for those buildings still to be constructed, a maximum of 29 camping pitches, and picking up on what members have said, the submission of a flood warning and evacuation plan, obviously along with the Section 106 agreement to tie the campsite to Charity Farm. So those are the options there for members to consider in terms of the two potential routes for delegation and the planning conditions.
That will, of course, the head of planning would put in that wording for conditions within the detailed wording of the conditions. Who was it? Oh, Councillor Weller.
Sorry, Chairman, thank you. Could item 6 read occupied by persons employed at the rather than one person living there on their own? Just an S there, please. Thank you, if that's okay.
Thank you for that. I'm now going to go back to the original proposal, which is you, Councillor Ireland, to deliberate as to which of those two options appeal to you.
So I'm very happy with the conditions as listed with Councillor Weller's amendment. I'm really not happy with option 2. You know, in the end, we're a planning committee and we're here to make a decision. And it seems to me the extra bit tacked on just removes that from us. Section 106 is your standard, happy to delegate that. But I'm not happy with it going outside our control and then potentially getting refused. I don't think the risk for JR is really, it's so, it's next to nothing is to make no odds, unless this council itself would take a JR against itself. I don't think that's a thing, is it? No, I'd like to go with option 1. That's my proposal anyway. So.
Councillor Weller.
I'm happy to support that.
The proposal actually is to refuse the officer's recommendation and to approve the original application under recommendation option 1 as shown on the screen. I'm now going to take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour for that recommendation?
Unanimous.
That is unanimous. That actually concludes this particular item on the agenda. Members, we'll now take, item 5B on your original agenda, of course, as I've mentioned, has been deferred. So we'll now take item 5C on the agenda, PFUL 2022-05509, Scoutland, land opposite Holy Trinity Burial Ground, Beminster, DT8 3FF, and that's for the re-erection of an open-sided shelter sited adjacent to existing scout hut. And I'll wait for the public to disperse and ask our case officer, Charlotte Loveridge, to introduce the item. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. As you've already said, yes, this is for Scoutland, which is a site, the land opposite Holy Trinity Burial Ground in Beminster, for the re-erection of an open-sided shelter sited adjacent to existing scout hut. This is the plan to show the site location, which is about a third of a mile north of Beminster Square. To the northwest, you've got the Beminster School and Mountjoy School complexes and the school fields. To the south are sort of slightly newer developments, residential developments of the Orchard and Abbott Close and Fleet Street to the south, and the burial ground just to the east with open fields beyond. Excuse me. Here's a site plan of where the proposed shelter would go. The existing scout hut is shown there in the northeast corner, and then the proposed shelter would go just on the western side of the existing scout hut, and the access is onto the existing track to the east. This is a recent, fairly recent picture from Google Earth, which shows the new scout hut on the site there. So the shelter would just go on the western side there. You've got the burial ground, as you can see, to the east. The closest neighbour is on the northern boundary, which is Oak House, which is a relatively new development that was built sort of 2020-21, and the building nearest on the northern boundary is their ancillary building of garage and annex building. The track to the east, which is the access track for the site, is a public right-of-way footpath, but I mean it's not a highways maintained road. Okay, this slide shows Dorset Council freehold land, which the site is, which is the reason for it coming forward to committee for consideration. And as you see, the whole site is Dorset freehold land. Planning history for the site. Back in 2020, there was an application to remove the existing storage garage and erect a new Scout Hut building. This was to put up the new Scout Hut that is now on the site, which was built 2020-21, and this replaced a concrete block pebble dash garage storage unit that had been granted under a 2006 application at the start of 2007. And the shelter subject of this application was erected just alongside that concrete block garage. Earlier this year, a permitted development application was submitted by the applicant to ask whether re-erecting the shelter would be permitted development or not. The response given was that planning permission would be required because the site is for non-domestic use and it lies within the Dorset AONB. If it weren't within the AONB, then the proposed development would have come within the criteria of being permitted development. This is a plan that shows the elevations and floor plan, which essentially is 6 poles and metal roof sheeting. These are photos that were taken from the 2020 application for the new Scout Hut, which shows the shelter as it was previously erected next to the garage that was removed, which, yeah, shows that it is some posts and metal roofing. These pictures, these show the new Scout Hut as built, and the proposed shelter would go just on the western side here. This picture here shows basically they've got it the area fenced off as they're storing the materials to reuse on that site. So it would just be right next to the existing building. The main issues, the principle of development. The principal support for the siting of the shelter at the Scout Hut is gained from policy COM4, which is for new or improved local recreational facilities. That is on the basis that it would not generate significant single-purpose trips by private car and would not undermine the commercial viability of nearby community facilities, which may be better placed to service the needs of the surrounding community. The site has a long-established use of the site for Scout activities. Scale design impact on character and appearance. The scale design is very minimal and is an appropriate location, being adjacent to the existing purpose-built Scout Hut. The proposed structure would have a flat roof, be 7.5 metres long by 3.10 metres wide and 2.10 metres high. And the proposed materials are reusing the olive green coloured metal profile sheeting for the roof and timber posts. Impact on amenity. One objection was received regarding a potential neighbouring amenity issue, from wind damage. However, construction details are not required when we have been given the size, appearance and materials for the proposed structure. And it is for the applicants to ensure that the structure is safe when constructed and remains safe throughout its lifetime. It is considered there are no closely related neighbouring properties that will be adversely affected by this scheme. Impact on landscape. The siting of the proposed shelter within the grounds of Scoutland will not create any harm to the wider Dorset AONB, given the modest proposal and design of the structure. And tree coverage will help to screen the site through summer. It's discreetly positioned on the western side of the Scout Hut, and as such is considered that the Dorset AONB landscape is preserved, as the structure will not be visually isolated or in a prominent position such as to impact significantly on the natural beauty of the area. The economic benefits, additional shelter for the Scouts and no loss of facilities. There's no impact on the existing trees or hedgerows on the site or protected species or biodiversity. The scale of the site is below the threshold for requiring a biodiversity appraisal. The site is not within a high flood risk zone. Whilst there is a watercourse adjacent to the western boundary, this is at a slightly lower level than the site, and the proposal will not increase the risk of flooding elsewhere. There will be no impact or change to the existing provisions for parking or accessing the site. The use of the site is already established for Scout Group activities, and this proposal will not generate any additional vehicular movements. Therefore, the recommendation is that the committee be minded to delegate authority to the head of planning and enforcement to grant planning consent subject to conditions of the standard 3-year implementation, approved plans, and the materials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? I now open the debate to members who would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Could I simply suggest that we approve the officer's recommendation? That's my proposal.
And do we have a seconder? Who was first? Councillor Ireland, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I second that. I like the fact that it's actually going to look nicer than the old one if you look at the pictures. So yeah, fine.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? We've got a proposal which has been duly seconded on this particular item. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
That is unanimous. Thank you. I've had no prior notification of any item of business which is considered to be urgent pursuant to Action 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. Item 7 on the agenda, exempt business. I've had no prior notification of any item viewed as likely to disclose exempt information within the meaning of paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. Item 8 on the agenda, appeals decisions. Members, I direct your attention to noticed appeals and appeal decisions, particularly with regards to material considerations and how it will impact on future deliberation. And